Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Portia Monique, and I am here with a true leader on the sidelines, head coach James Colzie the third of Florida A&M, the Florida A&M. Um, Proud Miami native,
Yep.
former Florida State standout, Coach Colzie is bringing the fire, focus, and FAMU pride to what's shaping up to be a blockbuster 2025 season. From spring grain prep to the legendary Orange Blossom Classic, which we'll get into a little later, let's get into it. Coach Colzie, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Super excited to be speaking with you today. As I mentioned, we have some ties up here in Detroit to Florida A&M, and it's a lot of Rattlers and alumni here in Detroit as well as down there currently. So
Mhm.
excited. So
Well,
go ahead.
no, go ahead. I mean, obviously, you got rattlers all over the country, and I was surprised with the up north. A lot of the up north rattlers that I've learned about, and people coming from Detroit, Chicago. I wonder what made them come to Florida A&M.
hmm Well, you guys have a very good reputation. Your alumni association
Mhm.
is vast.
Right.
From LA to Detroit to East Coast, like the alumni is prominent. You
Right.
got some well-known alumni out there that kicking butt. You guys just got the Will Packer Stadium down there. I
Yes.
mean, the more famous your alumni, the more people are interested to come in a FAMU.
Well, obviously the travel that you do as a head football coach at Florida A&M, there's a few airports that I go into, and somebody's not giving me a strike, looking at me, what I mean, and recognizing me,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, we got a strong alumni, strong foundation, and believe me, it's a blessing to be walking around as the 19th head football coach here at Florida A&M.
Absolutely, and congratulations. And we can't. I would be remiss to say, that your football team is phenomenal, and
Yeah.
so we are expecting some great things from you. I haven't been to a game, and I don't know how long, but maybe we might change that this
Yeah, well,
weekend.
I'll say this: you are missing out. You are
I
definitely
know,
missing out.
I know.
It is the best home experience in the nation.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna fix that really soon. And
Please.
I know for a fact I'll be down there August 30th, Miami Gardens for
Okay.
the Orange Blossom Classic.
Uh,
So let's get into that right away.
uh,
It's already shaping up to be one of the most talked about games of the season. What does this historic matchup between you and Howard, the Bisons, mean to you personally and to the program as well?
well, I mean, I think historically, right? It's hard to have the Orange Blossom Classic without having Florida A&M in the game, right? So, obviously, we took a year off, not being in it. A great game was played last year, but there's just always something a little bit different when Florida A&M is at the game, right? So, I think that's definitely and foremost. Obviously, us playing Howard in the Celebration Bowl in 2023, so you get the rematch, of the Celebration Bowl. Obviously we were to win the game, but then just our football internally, right? I'm born and raised in Miami, Florida. Graduated high school. We have about 25 to 30 guys that are from the South Florida area, so in all reality, you get a chance to come home, and then as we mentioned earlier, and as we talked about earlier, just the alumni base just across the nation. Well, in South Florida, there's going to be quite a few Rattlers down there cheering us on.
Yeah, yeah. I can't wait for it, right? So I'm an HBCU alum. I attended Grambling State University. So I know all about those games. I know all about that HBCU culture. So I'm looking forward to experiencing it again. I think the last game that I've been to was probably the Bayou Classic, and that's,
Yeah,
huge for Grambling and
absolutely.
Southern. But I am so looking forward to this Orange Blossom Classic. Now, this year's theme, built on history, fueled by pride,
Mhm.
how does that resonate with your team's mission this season?
Well, I think for us, right, within the first game of the year, it kind of sets the tone for the season, right? I think, you mentioned the Bayou Classic. It doesn't matter what the records are, right? It's a game,
Yeah.
even our game with the Florida Classic, it doesn't matter what the records are, and we play Bethune. You just want to make sure you win the game. Well, for us, obviously, we won a national championship in 23. To most people and to some people, even to myself, we underwhelmed last year, not necessarily getting a chance to repeat as champions, but it gives us an opportunity just to start the season off correctly. Right? It's our first game of the year. Everyone's gonna be, you're gonna be judgmental one way or the other with whether you win or lose. And then obviously Howard being as respectful as they've been throughout the year as far as having great football teams. It kind of gives you a gauge of where you are in the beginning of the season. Now, the historical aspect, right? Again, us being a part of the Orange Blossom Classic, you talk about the Coach Hubbard, you talk about the coach, Coach Gators, all of those guys and players that have historically been figures in this football game, right? It's to be a part of. I was a part of it as an assistant when we played in it against Jackson State, for 2 years, and just seeing all the fans, seeing all the football players that are going to be coming to this game, it sets the tone, regardless. So, obviously you want to make sure you want to be on the correct side of that game.
Absolutely. Now, as you all head into the spring game on April 12th, what key things are you looking for from your players, both veterans and the new additions?
Well, I think for us, you just want to make sure you're putting a quality product out there, right? Obviously, for us, it's going to be our 13th practice. It just happens to be our spring game. Guys are they're fighting for jobs, right? To be
Yeah.
a first teamer or a second teamer, as into the summer. But I think the biggest thing for us is as we continue to gel with this football team, we're further with our football team this year than at any point we were last year around this time, right? We had 56 to 57 players last spring. This spring we're sitting at 93 to 94. We were able to bring in some quality guys in the portal, from the portal, during the month of January. So, you're just to make sure you learn from whatever mistakes you may have made last year. So I think we've done a good job with that. But I will say this. I want us to play well. I want us to play together. But I want to make sure we don't have any major injuries, right? Because this, this is practice. This is a spring game. I want to make sure we come out 100% healthy as well.
Absolutely. And speaking of last season, what were some of the key areas of growth that you identified, and how have those informed your off-season strategy?
Well, we have a very, very old, we're older this year, right? We got about 34 to 35 seniors this year compared to what we may have had last year. So, you have a lot of guys that learn from past mistakes. We knew discipline, which is one of our mantras for this year. We knew discipline was one of the biggest things that we needed to make sure we improved on. So we harped on those things even before practice, even just stuff that when we were doing our weight, when we were lifting, when we were doing our OTAs, when we were doing our fourth quarter drills. There were just some things that we needed to shore up discipline wise, because they cost us in some really, really big games. So, just making sure we take care of the details, making sure, obviously we want to make sure we finish everything. And ultimately at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're a family.
Yeah, yeah. Now talk about playmakers, right? So you said that you have a lot of seniors on the team. Who are some of your standout returners that we should keep our eyes on?
Well, I think offensively, you have to start up front, right? You're going to talk about Ashton Grable, all conference guy he returned last year. He's a two-time all conference offensive lineman that's returning. Charles Davis, an offensive lineman who was an All-American last year, he's returning. You got Thad Franklin, who's probably the best back in the conference, right? You got him. Our quarterbacks, we're still kind of plugging in a way to see who those guys are going to be. But our receivers, you got Jalen Rogers, a guy who didn't play for us last year, but he will be a great football player. Quan Lee, who had a great offseason and had a great year last year. Right, we Kanari Wiltshire, a young man from Illinois. Kobe Gross, who's the best tight end in the conference. So those are just guys offensively that kind of stand out. But when you look at us defensively, James Ash, a guy who was all conference, right? He's a standout. Nayron Jenkins, who had a great year last year at our linebacker spot, he's returning. Chase Lloyd, starting safety, he's returning. So TJ Huggins, starting corner, he's returning. So, we have in that of 34 to 35 seniors that are returning. We have some guys that played a lot of football for us last year. They played a lot of football for us in 23. So we're a pretty veteran, but our schedule, one of the best in the country. We're gonna have to make sure we come ready to play every week. But I don't want to slight or shortchange anyone, but we got a lot of guys on our football team that can really do some really, really good for us, and hopefully we can be we can show it on Saturday.
Yeah. So it sounds like you guys have a star team
We do.
already. Yeah, I
We're
love it.
blessed.
Love
We're
it.
blessed.
So you've also added some new blood to your roster.
Yep.
Who a few of those fresh faces that you're excited to develop and watch emerge this year?
Well, I'll start defense this time. I think you have to talk about Taquan Lattimore, a young man who came from Charlotte. He's every 6'2", 6'3" pounds. He's going to be a guy that plays safety for us. Justice Cross, the linebacker who came from Murray State, FAU. The guy had over 80 tackles last year at Murray State, and then was a really, really good for Florida Atlantic. He's going
Mm-hmm.
to be a guy that's going to be manning, one of our linebacker spots. Then you got you guys that play star position for us. It's our nickelback. You got a guy by the name of Simeon Hines who redshirted last year. He'll be a good player for us to
Nice.
go along with Jamil Sanders, who played a lot for us last year. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just the guys I would say on the defensive side. Elijah Philippe, offensive tackle. We call him Chigozio Kiki, another offensive line that did offensive lineman who did a really, really good job for us. So, for the portal, for the most part, I think we did a good job of filling holes,
Yeah.
and I'm excited about them as well.
Well, I don't know what to say because it seems like you guys have an all-star team. I don't know about that other team. We're not even going to speak on that other team, but
Well,
it sounds like you guys are hitting the ground running, coming out the gate really, really strong. I appreciate that. And I always appreciate a great matchup between two good teams. So I'm gonna be excited. I'm gonna be on the sidelines. I'm gonna be watching, right?
yes.
Um, so FAMU also had players invited to the HBCU Combine.
Yep.
What does that say about talent coming out of your program, and how has that kind of recognition changed the landscape of recruiting?
Well, I mean, it's always great to, when you push guys or have guys that have success at the next level. I would say, over the last 3 or 4 years, Florida A&M has been able to put some quality guys in the NFL, and they just go as free agents and then were cut. I mean, these were guys that maybe went into the free agents, and they're second or third year with these football teams, right? So,
Yeah.
we're one of the very, very few that is able to actually have a pro day where scouts come in, and 18 scouts come in, and we had NFL scouts and then 2 CFL scouts to come in and watch our guys. So, Florida A&M is a place that you can attend, play football, and make it at the next level. So, that's been going on over the last few years. We got, Kendall Bowler, Jalen Goss. There's a couple guys that Jamari Gassett are a couple guys that are going to get opportunities to play at the next level. And,
Mhm.
like I told them last week, and like I told Jamari Gassett today, it only takes you're one team. And
Yeah,
if you can get that one team to take a chance on you and you do what you need to do, then again, that'll be a great thing for that individual.
I love it.
Excuse me.
No worries. Now you've also lost some key players from
Yep,
last season. How
we
do
did.
you approach building leadership and chemistry in a transitioning locker room?
Well, I think it's important. We brought those portal guys in where compared to last year when players after winning the championship, we were only able to bring them in during the summer of last year. Where now this year,
Mhm.
right, knowing the guys that we were going to lose, we were able to address those needs in January. So being
Mhm.
able to have those guys come in January, go through our lifts, go through our fourth quarter drills, go through our OTAs, you
Yeah.
can only get close, right? You're working, you're banging, you're grinding away, and you're to lean on each other during that time, right? So
Mhm.
in all reality, right, for the most part, you have 12 weeks where you're playing a game, right? There's 52
Mhm.
weeks in the year. So there's
Right.
40 weeks where you're working to make sure you're ready for those 12 weeks, right? A lot of that
Mhm.
stuff is done during that January, right, to May, June
Yeah.
timeframe. So those 95 guys that we have on roster right now, they were able to do everything together. So
Love it.
that's gonna help with unity. That's gonna help with just being tight, right? Working with each other, working together. So that was something that we weren't necessarily able to do. Obviously, we were going through our transition. I wasn't named the head coach until late January. Where this year, right,
Congratulations.
being
Mhm.
together, being tight, that started January 6th.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Now let's talk about your legacy, right? You are a Miami native.
Yep.
You played at Powerhouse Florida State.
Yep.
How does it feel to now be leading FAMU, especially heading into a season opener right back at home in Miami Gardens?
Well, I think the first way I'd say is blessed, right? And all the things that you mentioned, those have been bestowed upon me, right? So I think
Mhm.
that my family, right, my mother, and my father, I can't help. They did a pretty good job with me as far as making sure I was where I needed to be,
Sounds
praying
like
for
it.
me. I got a lot of people praying for me
Yeah.
that have put me in this situation, right? You get a chance to go home, go back to Miami, the head football coach at the number one HBCU in the country. Like it's I have thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know there's gonna be some butterflies when I run out on that field. The time, at that time of the day. But ultimately, right, I got to get this football team ready to play. I can't worry about all
Yeah.
that other stuff. I got to worry about those 105 guys that are in the roster, that are on my roster, that are going to be ready to run on that football field when we do open up against Howard. So, there'll be some sentimental things, I'm pretty sure, once I go home, but the most important thing is to make sure, we're ready to play and win that home opener. That home opener, excuse me, win that opener against Howard down in South
Yeah.
Florida.
Yeah, yeah. One thing sure that I can tell from just briefly talking to you is that you were built for this.
Thank you.
So, no, thank you for being the leader that you are and making sure that you're going out there and representing. Now, speaking of being the leader, speaking of being legacy, how has your own experience as a former D1 athlete shaped the way that you lead and connect with your team at FAMU?
Well, I'll say this, I started coaching in 1999. That was my first job. I was coaching at FIU. It was a program that was just starting. And then I'm comparing myself to a coach in 1999 to now being the head football coach here in 2025, right? I can tell you this, these guys are different. You've learned how to handle situations, you've learned how to handle adversity, you've been around, I've been around a lot of different players, different walks of life, things of that nature. I just say that, you can't coach everyone the same.
Mhm.
Guys right now are learning differently, so you have to take the time to get to know these guys, right?
Mhm.
Before they play for you, they got to be able to trust you. And those are all things that I've learned throughout my tenures at all the other places that I've been at, right? So, for me, right, I love my coaches, right, because I trusted them. I believed in them. They were going to put me in the right spots at the right time. Now as a head coach, and even when I was a position coach or a head coach at other places, right? Those guys have to feel that you trust them and you're gonna always have their best interest. And that's
Yeah.
how I go about it every single day. There are guys, we'll talk football, but ultimately every day I'm gonna ask a few of my players at a time, how's everything at home? How's your family? How are you doing? Talk to me about your schoolwork. Because if you care about football,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get everything that you feel you get from those players.
Mhm. Yeah, making that personal connection is so key.
Absolutely.
Um, Last question for you,
Yes, ma'am.
coach. Finish the sentence.
Okay.
By the time we walk off that field in Miami Gardens on August 30th, people will know that FAMU football is.
1-0. That's how we want it. We're 1-0. We take it right. I'll get a chance to field and and make sure I say congratulations and good luck to the head coach at Howard. But we want to make sure 1-0 because that's how we want every week. We want to 1-0.
Love the confidence, coach. Big thanks to you for taking the time to give us that inside look at FAMU football. The Rattlers are locked in and loaded and ready to make history this season,
Thank you.
starting with that Orange Blossom Classic, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We will be watching, coach. Let us know, how do we keep up with you? How do we make sure that we're following you as well as the team?
Well, my Twitter. So you're talking social media? Is that what you're talking
Social
about?
media, yeah.
My Twitter is pretty easy. It's
Okay.
at Coach Colzie, C as in cat, OLZIE. That's the best way to get a hold of me. But I think we do a great job here at FAMU of making sure football is at the forefront.
Yeah.
But my following me, the best thing I would do is just say I'll be on Twitter. And I actually need you to come in and talk to my team because the energy that you bring, hey man, it is infectious.
Listen,
I think I get up to I might need you to come talk to the team before we play
I'm gonna be
Howard
down there.
and then send them, and you'll be the one that sends them out. Not me. It'll be you.
Listen, I'll be down there. No worries. Just make sure y'all send for me. I'll be down there.
I
Okay.
got you. I got
So,
perfect. Awesome.
coach, best of luck this
Hey,
season.
I
We will see
I
you
appreciate your
on.
time. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We'll see you in field, coach.
Sounds
Take
good.
care.